I'm Ashley with YNAB. I just pulled down a bunch of books off my bookshelf because today I wanted to share some of the books that have made the biggest impact on my life. When I started planning this video, my list of books was 20 some long. So to narrow it down, my requirement became that the book must have given me a tool or a lesson that I use in my day-to-day life. These are the 5 that made the cut, and I'm really excited to share them with you. Book number 1 is The 5-Second Rule, The Fastest Way to Change Your Life by Mel Robbins. I own this one digitally. I also own the audiobook, which I've listened to twice. I really like, especially for personal development books and memoirs, when it's the author reading it. It just makes it more personal. So here's the 5-second rule. When you have an instinct to act on a goal, you must physically move within 5 seconds or your brain will kill that instinct. This happens to me all the time. I could be scrolling on social media and have the thought, I really should get on top of things. I should start by responding to that text message. And I sit for a second and my brain will say, well, it's kind of awkward. You're gonna have to ask them this. You know what? I'll just wait until tomorrow morning when I'm fresh. Or I should get up and I should go to the gym today. But maybe Tuesday is a better day than Monday because I have XYZ going on. So I'm so good at making excuses, and the 5-second rule really helps me to stop that and to just do a small task. Just moving, maybe it's simply grabbing my phone or putting on my sneakers. So something small that helps me to build momentum. And the way I use this every single day is actually first thing in the morning. Before reading this book, I used to set my alarm 30 minutes before I actually needed to get up. I loved waking up, seeing the time, and realizing I had 30 more minutes so I could fall back asleep. But Mel goes into some of the science behind sleep and why it's so dangerous to snooze in the morning. We're basically setting ourselves up to have a foggy brain all morning. So when I read that, I took her advice and I started by putting my phone outside of the bedroom to charge. So that way, when the alarm goes off in the morning, I can't think, oh, I'm gonna snooze because I can't reach my phone. So I must physically move, get out of bed, walk out of the room to turn off the alarm. So it's really helped me break that snoozing habit. This next book, I can honestly say, if I hadn't read it, I would not be sitting here talking to you today. It is the You Need a Budget book, The Proven System for Breaking the Paycheck-to-Paycheck Cycle, Getting Out of Debt, and Living the Life You Want by Mecham. I actually read the book before I ever downloaded the app, and I wrote all about that story on the YNAB blog. So if you're interested, I will link the blog post down below. I'd read a popular personal finance book in my early 20s, and while I found it incredibly helpful, it also left me feeling bad about myself, that I was always going to be bad at money, that I didn't get it, and that budgeting was a terrible, restrictive thing. This book takes the exact opposite approach. The tone is helpful, it's friendly, it's not telling me what I should be doing with my money. Instead, it painted this picture of what my life could look like without money stress, and I loved it. I wanted that so badly. So as soon as I finished reading this, I immediately downloaded the app, and this book has been the gateway into other personal finance reading. And I will show you. 2 standouts are I Will Teach You to Be Rich and The Simple Path to Wealth. I know that Jesse has had Ramit on the podcast, so I will put that link down below. I'm not sure if he's interviewed J.L. Collins, but J.L. Collins, okay, this is one. I have bought the physical copy of this book because I've loaned it out to so many people, but if you were going to get the audio version through the Libby app or using Audible, this is the book to get it because J.L. Collins' voice is awesome and his advice is so good, especially with what's going on in the stock market right now. I'm still feeling cool as a cucumber because I have J.L. Collins' voice in the back of my head. Next up, I have Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. Now, every other book I'm sharing today, I've read multiple times. This one I've only read once because it made me feel so emotionally exposed. But now that I'm filming this video, it makes me want to read it again. But I could do an entire video just on this one book, but there is one section that I think about. Sadly, I have to think about it pretty much every single day. It's the idea that people use foreboding joy as armor against vulnerability. Before I started reading this book, I thought I was the only one who did this. It's happened to me a few times recently, very recently. I was sitting across a Starbucks table from my dad. I was looking at him and thinking about how much I love him and how much he does for our family. And I immediately thought, what if he dies? What are we gonna do without him? And Jeremy and I were driving in the country over the weekend. It was a beautiful, beautiful day, like a little bit of spring in the air, the sun was shining. I looked over at him and thought about how wonderful it was that he was home, and what if we get in a car accident? What in the world? But after reading this book, I think she says like 80% of parents who she interviewed and studied said that they look in at their kids sleeping and think about something terrible happening to them. So it's like we think if we can imagine the worst, it will prepare us if it actually comes. And I do want to read one quick passage. This is in chapter 4, and she's interviewing a man in his 60s, and he says, "I used to think the best way to go through life was to expect the worst. That way, if it happened, you were prepared, and if it didn't happen, you were pleasantly surprised. Then I was in a car accident and my wife was killed. Needless to say, expecting the worst didn't prepare me at all. And worse, I still grieve for all those wonderful moments we shared and that I didn't fully enjoy. My commitment to her is to fully enjoy every moment now. I just wish she was here now that I know how to do that." So by imagining the worst, I'm not preparing myself for the future. Instead, I'm robbing myself right now. And further into chapter 4, she teaches you how to take off that armor of foreboding joy. And the phrase I say to myself all the time is lean into joy. So if I have one of those weird thoughts, instead of letting myself spiral, instead I think, what am I grateful for? I'll look over at Jer and think, I'm grateful for the sun. I'm grateful that we had the time to take off together so that we could drive out here and spend the day together. And it stops me from spiraling, and then it puts me back on the right track. You would think a book about housekeeping with this crazy cover would be safe for me, but this one made me emotional too. It's called How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind, Dealing with Your House's Dirty Little Secrets by Dana K. White. In my mind, Dana and I are best friends. She's so funny and she has such a down-to-earth, come to me as you are and I will help you get your house under control. Now, this book is not for everybody. If you can't sleep because you have a single dirty dish in your sink, I don't think you will get anything from this. However, if you have ever wanted to collapse in tears over the state of your house, or if you've ever kept unexpected guests waiting at the door because you didn't want them to see what your house looked like, this book might be life-changing, because that's what it was for me. The greatest lesson I learned is that housekeeping is not a project. This is what I would do. I would let things build up, so maybe the kitchen was looking really rough, and then one Saturday morning I would wake up and say, today's the day, I'm gonna make my kitchen perfect. I would take everything out of the cupboards, wipe everything down, mop the floor, deep clean the oven. So by the end of the day, I was worn out, but it was perfect. And I felt so fantastic about myself until someone would walk into the kitchen and pick up a dish and dirty it. What do you mean you're dirtying dishes? I just spent all day cleaning it. That's the thing about cleaning. It's not a project because it doesn't have an end date. I can't say, well, the kitchen is clean and it's gonna stay that way forever. I will need to use a bowl, I will track in dirt, my pet will shed. So by switching my thinking of housekeeping as a project to it being a habit was a light bulb moment, and I'm still not perfect, but I am so much better than how I used to be. Ending the video with a book on the drier side. This one will not make you laugh, but I promise you it's really good. This is Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. And if you couldn't tell, I'm not naturally organized. I really have to fight for it. In one of my first jobs, I was working at a government contractor and I had a fantastic boss who was really invested in me. She had come back one day from management training and she had this printout. And it was a chart of what you're supposed to do when a new idea comes into your inbox. If I remember right, it was how to use Getting Things Done in Outlook, but I was intrigued enough that I ended up buying an old edition of this book. The concept that David Allen teaches, that your brain is for having ideas, not for storing them, was huge to me. And it was a great lesson to learn as I was entering the workplace and helped me lay a good foundation. So while I don't follow the Getting Things Done method to a T, it gave me what I needed. It gave me the framework to create my own simplified productivity system that works for my life, that I use, and that I trust. So I went from somebody who was a chronic to-do list maker, which I still love to make a to-do list, but I would wonder why I would get overwhelmed with them. Like, it was fun making them, but when it actually came to doing the things on the list, I would be stuck. David Allen teaches that not every to-do list item is as simple as it looks on paper. As an example, let's take this past weekend. I wanted to shop for my friend Diana's birthday present. So that sounds easy. Buy Diana's present would be something I would put on a to-do list item. But if it has multiple steps, he says it's actually a project. So I needed to think, what is my budget for this gift? Do I have any ideas? Am I going to shop online? Am I going to drive and go to a store? Am I going to wrap it? Will I take it to UPS? Will I take it to the post office? So by calming myself and just saying the first thing, how much I need to set a budget. Done. Next item, let's just brainstorm some ideas for what I could potentially get, or maybe a book, maybe a beauty item. So by breaking up these tasks into smaller, manageable pieces, it stops me from getting overwhelmed, and I kind of chase that momentum, because when you do one small task, it's easy to just go into the next. I could talk about books for the rest of the afternoon. I will stop myself here. I hope that one I shared was interesting to you, and if you have a book that impacted your life, please leave it in a comment down below so I can add it to my own to-read list. And if you like personal finance and productivity, please consider subscribing to our channel. We'll be back with more videos very soon.